Hello and welcome to Business24 on NTN News 24. We're coming to you from the Central Business District in the nation's capital, Abuja. The Nigerian economy is affected unbelievably by what happens around here. This also has a whole lot to do with the top stories we will be featuring in this edition. First, doing business in Nigeria and Africa is said to be hampered by the word transparency, another name for corruption. You will find out how this is infecting and affecting the business community. Transparency is also a concern in dealings in foreign exchange. The multiple exchange rate means that sometimes what you expect is not what you get. You may recall that we promised you last week that we shall be providing more details on the World Economic Forum held in Davos from the eyes of someone who was there. We also have our regulars in moving Nigeria beyond oil. Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State speaks to us exclusively. You will also get to meet a young entrepreneur and learn from our CEO of the week. I am Sophie Agbomian. Thanks for joining us. Now let's get started. The CBN, with its headquarters right behind us, usually issues the official foreign exchange rates. The last time I checked, it was 305.25 naira to a dollar. However, you cannot get forex directly from the CBN. The only source officially is from commercial banks and the Bureau de Change. Now try getting the dollar at these official outlets at the official CBN rates and you'll meet something else. Vivian Edepefu intervened and got the central bank to respond.
The country's foreign exchange rate provides a window into the status of its economy. It is usually determined by a combination of forces such as fiscal and monetary policies as well as the depth of a country's foreign reserves. However, there are also factors such as political stability, pure speculation, and sometimes other opaque forces. In the last 2 years, Nigeria was hit by a foreign exchange crisis that saw the naira dip so badly against all major currencies in the world. Of recent, there has been some recovery, though the currency has not returned to anywhere near its pre-2016 rate. It has attained relative stability, but a multiple exchange regime continues to exist. The Central Bank of Nigeria, which has statutory responsibility for managing the naira, issues the official rate of the naira. The published CBN rate for the dollar, which is usually most sought by end users, has swung between 305 and 306 naira to the dollar. However, try getting it at the official windows for the end users, and you are presented with a different price template. At commercial banks or the Bureau de Change, end users are segmented, and the rate at which you get the dollar depends upon where you belong. For the average end user, it is usually at 360 naira to a dollar.
There are other windows where you might see flexible rates of 325, maybe 305 at times, or where it fluctuates. It might be less than 360. Those are special windows that are created by CBN to fund the real sectors: agriculture, spare parts, manufacturing, maybe petroleum imports, and so on and so forth. So those windows are where it is as the client bids, the banks bid on behalf of the client, that's what you get. But right now, the maximum rate that CBN sells to FX, to commercial banks, is about 360.
Dr. Obed Melafia is a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and a renowned economist.
The truth is, we need to find out where these monies are going to. If you give them at such rate, they sell to the others at 360 or whatever, and they make such a huge margin. We run the risk of making dollar trading becoming a substitute for real traditional banking, which should not be the case.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, which has employed various initiatives to bring some stability to the Naira, says it is still hopeful that some convergence can still be achieved.
And so we have an official exchange rate for official businesses in the interbank, and then we also created other windows for people who deal in other aspects of the foreign exchange market. We expect that with time these rates will emerge, but given the peculiarities of the economy today, it is only reasonable that you don't allow the Naira float.
Dr. Melafia has some specific ideas on what the Apex Bank can do.
I think we need to go back, if you asked me, to what I call the Dutch auction system. Yes, we have 305 as the base price for the government, but you know, the central bank needs to create a market and say, look, you bid for the currency, and then they take the average of that bid as the rate at which banks will be allocated foreign exchange. And there needs to be commitment to transparency and to an open trading and fair competitive environment for the foreign exchange market. If we could do that, it would naturally improve the Naira. After all, the underlying fundamentals of the Nigerian economy, as most investors understand, is still very robust.
There are periodic interventions by the CBN in the interbank market to ease liquidity and check fluctuation in rates for the stability of the Naira.
Experts are of the opinion that in spite of the efforts of the CBN, the foreign exchange market is still opaque. This takes us to our next story, which also has something to do with transparency. African leaders are back home just after the AU summit, which they decided to collectively take on corruption, which has become virtually associated with the continent. One sector actually affected is business, and Kunle Adeyeye takes a look on how corruption affects business.
When the world starts talking about the ills in Africa and indeed Nigeria, one of the first things that pops up is corruption. The common position is that corruption is so endemic that it permeates every sector of human endeavor on the continent. African leaders are on this same wavelength and believe that cutting corruption down to size is the only way the continent can rise. A strong economy is critical to this, and that is where the business community comes in. The formal and informal sectors in Nigeria have quite some stories to tell about their experience with corruption. Dr. Tayo Aduleju is of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which has extensively analyzed the practice and malpractice of corruption.
The entire system thrives on a corrupt culture, driven by corrupt values, that is then driven by corrupt entities, both business and government. Most of Africa suffers from systemic corruption. Like we say in Nigeria, shake body, that already creates the basis for systemic corruption. Now, you can also have systemic corruption in the private sector, where the design of the business or the enterprise is structured to evade tax, is structured to shortchange the customer or to game the market. And there are many examples of this. Tax evasion is the easiest example.
Apart from these examples of Dr. Aduleju, Ogbona Ukuku, an economic development expert, provides more insight into how corruption manifests itself.
For a businessman to function in a society or in a system, the system, first of all, would throw its leg out, and then the businessman will now dance the music that follows. If a man probably had gone to go and take a loan from a bank to set up a factory, and then his interest rate is already reading, and then he comes to probably get a license from a government institution, and then you are delaying him, and then you expect him to pay you this or that before he gets across to now start to do his business. Now, and then if his interest rate is already reading, and then his business is being affected, what do you expect him to do? But that is morally wrong. But the truth about the matter is, for him not to get into the bigger problem, which would be not being able to pay his loan, losing his assets, or whatever it is, or losing his business, he will as well find himself trying to cut corners to be able to just stay afloat as a businessman.
Tope Fashua, a renowned Nigerian economist, looks at the wholesale effect of corruption on businesses and the Nigerian economy.
Corruption has damaged the businesses in Africa, has damaged the economies, and continues to do so. Nigeria actually occupies a prime place in this issue, in this infamous assembly of corruption, as it were. Nigeria actually is perhaps known as one of the most corrupt in Africa, which is a big garland, if you like, to wear, you know. And the reason why the economy has not grown this well is because of that corruption.
Nigeria and several other African countries have long realized the corrosive effect of corruption on their economies. As a continent, huge figures have been circulated about the proceeds of corruption moved outside the continent annually.
Between 1970 and 1997, reports show that Africa lost $187 billion to illicit flows. Other reports put that as a conservative figure. Some reports put it as high as $400 billion.
The decision of African leaders to confront corruption on a continental scale seems to suggest that the continent has had enough. Nigeria has some initiatives that these experts believe can give teeth to any real aspiration to cut out corruption.
I believe very much in the role of technology. If human beings are not allowed to also screw up technology as it is. You know, we are talking about the era of TSA in Nigeria. Before then, we were talking of e-governance, that people should pay, you know, money that are meant for government direct into government accounts. It shouldn't pass through any human being and all of that.
We reduce the amount of human interference in businesses. For example, if you want to get a license of some sort to do your business, if you can do it online without meeting anybody and get your license, make your payment online, see, then you will not have cost to have any conversations with anybody.
One of the things that we've done in Nigeria is to create what we call the Open Beneficiary Register, which indicates not just who are the directors of the company, but who is the final beneficiary of the proceeds from the company. The third thing that reduces systemic corruption in business, of course, is corporate governance. If you set up solid corporate governance processes, policies, and structures, it reduces corruption risk internally, it reduces enterprise risk, and it increases transparency.
Transparency is a word that investors like to hear. It inspires them to invest in markets, brings confidence to big and small businesses with assurances of equitable operations. It is the magic word that the business community yearns to associate with doing business in Nigeria and the continent. Kunle Adeyeye for Business24.
To what extent does what happened in Davos affect the global economy? We asked former Deputy Governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria, Dr. Melafia.
It provides an opportunity to converse for business, to, touch base with investors, and showcase the best of Nigeria so that we can build great business synergies between ourselves and investors and potential investors.
One person who also experienced Davos firsthand was Anita Okemini, a member of the Abuja Global Shapers. She shared her experiences with us.
I was chosen as one of 50 young people that were going to represent the voice of the youth at the World Economic Forum this year. It was a huge learning experience for me. So I would say there are three core things that I learned. The first one is about the fourth industrial revolution. So we're currently going through the fourth industrial revolution, and what we see here is a fusing of the physical, digital, and biological world. So things like artificial intelligence, robotics are becoming more mainstream. And Africa is still at the second industrial revolution, so we don't have electricity. A lot of people don't have access to electricity. Specifically, more than 600 million people don't have electricity. And this is the second industrial revolution. How much more the fourth industrial revolution? So I think what I learned is that Africa is going to be left behind if we're not able to key into the fourth industrial revolution.
Next is our segment, Moving Nigeria Beyond Oil. One of the critical sectors that the country has been looking up into is the agricultural sector. And one state that has been reporting a positive growth in the sector is Kebbi State. Governor Atiku Bagudu spoke to us on the rice revolution in the state.
We should have banned rice importation yesterday, and I'm fully support of the national leadership, President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yomi Osibajo. And indeed, when I was excited when I read the stories in the paper that the Federal Executive Council, consistent with their commitment, has devoted so much time on rice and curtailment of rice smuggling. The production in Nigeria today supports the ban, supports a ban. There is enough production, there is enough rice that is better quality than the imported one that is being dumped on us. We should be exporting rice to those countries, not the other way around. Okay. We are selling to West African countries. That is export. It's growing. It's to do more, and in order to take it into other markets.
Governor Atiku says locally produced rice is already being exported out of Nigeria, which is largely informal. Our in-house expert on exports, Femi Boyede, however, has tips on how to conduct formal export in the agricultural sector.
Today, I'm talking about export in the agri value chain. Usually, when we say that non-oil export has the potential, the capacity to actually replace crude oil as the mainstay of Nigeria's economy and the principal foreign exchange earner, we must be able to link it with the fact that as of today, agriculture actually accounts for above 60% of active population engagement in Nigeria. Nigeria has made significant improvement in terms of packaging of foods and what have you. But we still remain principally a supplier of agricultural raw materials for the industries of the developed world. And that is actually reducing what our capacity to earn from export. Export should actually occupy the center place of our agricultural development plan in such a way that we, first and foremost, we are able to understand that there can be an export-driven agricultural transformation agenda. An export-driven transformation agenda for agriculture actually ensures that we now have export-oriented, export-specific designated farming and farms. That we have plantations for pineapple, for example, that are set up purely and simply to satisfy the export market. Export is and actually should be the principal pivot of our agricultural value chain, and if we're able to position ourselves to actually do export-driven agricultural production, then we are likely to begin to see a more significant contribution of agriculture to our foreign exchange earnings and total foreign reserves.
Now let's meet our CEO for the week, who is essentially a trader. He is the president of the National Association of Nigerian Traders. He also runs some businesses. Our CEO of the week is Ken Okoha, and he shares his experience. Let's take a look.
I am a trader by calling. I'm a lawyer by profession. My life and my background has some elements of mixed grace, and I call it that way, in the sense that when I finished from secondary school, there was no hope of going to school. There was nobody to train me, and I'd had to run away from home. Ran to Lagos and moved to where I started selling bags and shoes. I joined those in Idimota. We called them, Abuja that time, under the bridge, Abuja Bridge in Lagos. And I learned that business a little and then started on mine. But then one thing led to another, and I decided to go to school. You can do a lot with writing. You write so well. You see, do you know you can even make a living out of writing? That thing helped me. I never knew that I would be able to write and make money out of it. Today, apart from trading, I also do consultancy in writing. I consult for ECOWAS. I consult for African Union. I consult sometimes for United Nations.
Welcome to the segment of the program, Young Entrepreneur. Our entrepreneur for the week is Mr. Ogbonna Ukoko, and he is an investment promotion and economic development expert. Welcome, Mr. Ogbonna.
Thanks for having me.
Investment promotion and economic development expert. What exactly does that mean?
What we do actually is being able to support investors or sell a particular location to someone who is in another location. That's when it's foreign investment. And then when it's local investment, trying to sell the opportunities that already exist, within your sphere, and then making that opportunity, making the opportunity become a bit glaring, so that you can give support to the investor while he is making his investment decisions, and at the same time also getting all the people who are stakeholders within that particular circle to work towards achieving that goal, which is what the investor wants to do within that climb.
What have been your challenges over the years, and how have you been able to overcome them?
One of the challenges we face is being able to convince people, especially those who are in government, to see things from an investor's point of view, which is what I call seeing things from an investor's prism. It is so difficult for them, and I quite appreciate where they are coming from, because look at someone who's never done business before, who probably joined civil service from level 8, and then the person has grown to become a permanent secretary. He's never done business all his life, and then he's trying to now deal with someone who all his life has been doing business. So the culture, the background, they are two different things. So the ability, the inability for two of them to merge or converge at a particular point when it comes to decisions is actually where we come in.
What advice would you give to young people trying to get into your line of business?
What I will advise other people that want to get into it is a job that looks as simple as buying and selling, but if you don't understand the trade, you will eat your profits, eat your capital, everything. As simple as it looks, it's a job that you need to come and understudy. Okay, I'm always open to people who come to me for mentorship, because I mean, freely I was given, so I give freely. I teach people, I learn, I get people to understand the trade and what it's all about, because that's actually one of the things that we don't have enough people that understand investment promotion. And again, I've also noticed that we keep making that big mistake in Nigeria, that you're an investment banker does not make you an investment promoter. Rather, you can even take someone who learned marketing to do investment promotion. They will do a better job.
That's it for Young Entrepreneur this week. Mr. Ogbonna, thank you for joining.
All right, thanks for having me.
To round up this week's edition, let us see how the stock market performed in the preceding week.
I said, the market is a mix of up and down, what they call volatility. Goes up, goes down. It has been up since the beginning of the year. So, middle of last week, it went down. And we know the reason for that. A lot of them have been very low in prices. So, a lot of people took position. A lot of stakeholders took position, or market investors. So, they have to realize their gains. They have made a lot of fantastic gains from the bullish run.
And that's a wrap for this week's edition. I hope you've profited from watching it. I am Sophie Aigumia. Keep a date always with Business24. Bye for now.